Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Dawn, watching the stars drift past the massive viewing windows. His forearms crossed behind his back in the traditional Zephyrian pose of authority. The bridge crew moved quietly around him, checking systems and monitoring deep space scanners. They had been traveling for 3 months now, heading toward a small yellow star at the edge of the galaxy. The Empire had received strange signals from this system 6 months ago. Radio waves, primitive and chaotic, carrying what appeared to be entertainment broadcasts from some unknown species. The signals were weak and crude, the kind that civilizations sent out before they learned proper quantum communication. Most of the Imperial Science Council had dismissed them as cosmic noise, but Admiral Kethavar saw opportunity where others saw nothing. The Empire was vast, spanning nearly 1,000 star systems, but it was always hungry for more. New worlds meant new resources. New species meant new workers, and this particular world, the third planet from its sun, seemed perfect for conquest. "Report," Kethavar said to his communications officer. "We are receiving more signals from the target system." "Admiral," the young Zephyrian replied, her scales shimmering blue with excitement. "The inhabitants call their world Earth. They appear to be a single species called humans." Kethavar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Humans? What do we know about them?" The communications officer touched her console, bringing up a holographic display. Images flickered in the air above the bridge. Bipedal creatures with pink or brown skin. No scales, no natural armor. They walked on only 2 legs and had just 2 arms. They looked fragile and weak. They appear to be carbon-based mammals, Admiral. Very primitive. Our long-range sensors show they still use chemical propulsion for space travel. They have not even left their home system. Their weapons are crude projectile devices and chemical explosives. The Science Council has classified them as Category 7. Category 7, the lowest possible threat level. Kethavar had conquered Category 7 species before. It usually took less than a day. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. "A few hundred small vessels in orbit around their planet, Admiral. Nothing larger than a transport shuttle. No shields we can detect. No energy weapons. They appear to be completely defenseless." Kethavar studied the images more carefully. The humans looked so soft, so vulnerable. Their cities were spread across the surface of their world with no protective barriers. Their ships were metal tubes with fire shooting out the back. It was almost sad how primitive they were. "What about their population?" "Approximately 8 billion individuals, Admiral. They are divided into many small nations that frequently fight each other with their primitive weapons. They do not appear to have any unified government or military." Perfect. A divided species was always easier to conquer. Kethavar had seen it many times before. The locals would spend so much time fighting each other that they would never unite against the Empire. By the time they realized the real threat, it would be too late. "Admiral," another officer called from the sensor station, "we are detecting some unusual energy readings from the outer edges of the system." Kethavar turned his attention to the sensor officer. "Explain." "It appears to be some kind of space debris, Admiral. Very old, possibly abandoned. The energy readings are faint and irregular. Probably just stellar radiation interfering with our sensors. Threat level? None, Admiral. Whatever it is, it has been drifting in space for a very long time. Our computers cannot identify the design, but it shows no signs of active systems or weapons." Kethavar dismissed the report with a wave of his hand. Every system had old debris floating around. Asteroids, dead comets, ancient wreckage from forgotten civilizations. The galaxy was full of junk. "How long until we reach the target system?" 18 hours, Admiral. "Good. Send a message to the rest of the fleet. We will make this conquest a demonstration for the other worlds in this sector. I want every ship recording everything. When we are finished with these humans, the nearby systems will see what happens to species that resist the Empire." The communications officer nodded and began sending orders to the other ships in the fleet. 200 Imperial dreadnoughts, the pride of the Third Fleet. Each ship was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a moon. They had shields that could stop a direct hit from a star's solar flare. Their weapons could crack a planet's crust from orbit, and they were about to face a species that still used gunpowder. Kethavar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would be the easiest conquest of his career. The humans would surrender immediately when they saw the Imperial fleet arriving. They would probably worship the Empire as gods. It had happened before with primitive species. "Admiral," the science officer called out, "I have finished analyzing the human broadcasts. Would you like to review their military capabilities?" "Proceed." The holographic display changed, showing images of human soldiers. They wore fabric uniforms and carried metal tubes that fired small metal projectiles. Their vehicles rolled on wheels or flew through the air with spinning blades. Everything looked ancient and crude. "They call their conflicts wars, Admiral, but their largest battles involve only a few thousand individuals. Their most powerful weapons can destroy single buildings, but they require large vehicles to transport them. They have no orbital defense platforms, no energy shields, no quantum weapons." Kethvar's mandibles clicked again. "What about their space capabilities?" "Limited to their immediate orbital area, Admiral. They have sent a few small probes to nearby planets, but these missions take years to complete. They cannot travel faster than light. They appear to be completely isolated in their home system. It was almost too easy. Kethvar had fought rebel fleets that put up more resistance than this would. The humans were so primitive that they probably did not even know other intelligent species existed. They would be completely shocked when the Imperial fleet arrived. "Prepare the standard surrender demand," Kethvar ordered. "Multiple languages, full-spectrum broadcast. Give them the usual options: immediate surrender and integration into the Empire, or total annihilation." "Yes, Admiral." Kethvar walked to the front of the bridge, looking out at the stars. Soon those stars would include another system under Imperial control, another primitive species serving the Empire. Another easy victory to add to his record. Behind him, his crew continued their work. Weapon systems powered up. Shields activated. Sensors scanned ahead for any surprises. But there would be no surprises. The humans were helpless. As the Imperial fleet moved through hyperspace toward Earth, none of them noticed the faint energy signature that had been following them for the past week. None of their advanced sensors detected the probe that had been watching them, learning their language, studying their tactics, and sending reports back to something very old and very patient. In the outer darkness of the solar system, they were approaching. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemies were the ones you never saw coming, and sometimes the most primitive-looking species were not primitive at all. In the cold darkness between Neptune and Pluto, something that looked like a piece of ancient space junk slowly opened its eyes. Not physical eyes, but sensors that had been sleeping for 300 years. The object was roughly spherical, about the size of a small moon, and covered in what appeared to be random metal debris and ice. To any passing ship, it looked like nothing more than an old asteroid that had collected garbage over millions of years. But inside that disguise was the most advanced piece of technology ever created by human hands. And at its core was a mind that had once belonged to Dr. Elena Vasquez, the greatest military strategist Earth had ever produced. Shepard, as the AI called itself now, had been sleeping for a very long time. Every 50 years it would wake up for a few days, scan the local area for threats, listen to radio signals from Earth, and then go back to sleep. For 3 centuries, nothing interesting had happened. Earth's radio chatter continued. The humans down there lived their lives completely unaware that their greatest protector watched over them from the outer darkness. But today was different. Today, Shepard's deep space sensors had detected something that made every circuit in its vast consciousness burn with sudden alertness. Ships. Alien ships. And they were heading directly toward Earth. Shepard began processing information at a speed that would have melted the circuits of lesser machines. In the first millisecond, it analyzed the approaching fleet's formation, ship designs, and energy signatures. In the second millisecond, it intercepted and decoded their communications. In the third millisecond, it had learned their language, studied their tactical patterns, and understood their intentions. The Zephyrian Empire. Shepard had been watching them for decades through intercepted transmissions. A typical galactic power structure, large, aggressive, and convinced of its own superiority. They had conquered hundreds of worlds through overwhelming force and terror. Their standard procedure was simple: arrive with massive firepower, demand surrender, and either enslave the population or wipe them out completely. But what made Shepard's circuits hum with something that might have been anger was what the Empire thought about humanity. Category 7. Negligible threat. Primitive. Helpless, if they only knew. Shepard began accessing systems that had not been used for 300 years. Deep within the disguised station, ancient machinery hummed to life. Weapons that existed in 11 dimensions began charging. Shields that could stop a supernova started forming. Computing systems that operated faster than light began running combat simulations. The truth was that humanity had left Earth long ago. Not in ships, but in a way that most species could never imagine. They had learned to transfer consciousness into quantum substrates that existed outside normal space and time. They could appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly, build bodies out of pure energy, or exist as patterns of thought in the cosmic background radiation itself. But they had left Earth intact as a gift to the universe. A beautiful world where other species could evolve and grow, and they had left guardians like Shepard to make sure that gift was never taken by force. Shepard was not just a weapon. It was a library containing the complete knowledge of human civilization. Every book ever written, every song ever sung, every scientific discovery ever made. It carried the memories of billions of humans who had chosen to upload their consciousness before leaving for higher dimensions of existence, and every single one of those memories was screaming for justice. Shepard extended its sensors throughout the solar system, taking inventory of everything the Zephyrians might target. Earth's population had grown to 8 billion souls, living their lives in blissful ignorance of galactic politics. They had made progress since Shepard last checked. Cleaner energy, better medicine, the beginning of true artificial intelligence. In another few centuries, they might discover dimensional technology on their own. They deserved that chance. Shepard began deploying countermeasures that the Zephyrians could not possibly detect. Microscopic probes that could phase through matter, launched toward the approaching fleet. Quantum entanglement networks connected every major system in Earth's solar system. Gravitational manipulation fields began forming at strategic points throughout local space. The Zephyrians thought they were approaching a helpless world, defended by primitive rockets and chemical explosives. What they were actually approaching was a trap that had been waiting 300 years for someone stupid enough to threaten Earth. Shepard studied the enemy fleet more carefully. 200 dreadnoughts, each carrying approximately 50,000 crew members, standard Imperial design. Heavy armor, energy shields, plasma weapons, fusion bombs, impressive by galactic standards. Completely useless against human technology. But Shepard was not cruel. The uploaded consciousness of Dr. Elena Vasquez still remembered what it felt like to be human. It remembered compassion, mercy, and the value of life, even alien life. So Shepard began composing a warning message in perfect high Zephyrian, using idioms and cultural references that would make it clear this was not some primitive translation program. The message would be polite, firm, and completely clear about the consequences of continued aggression. Most species, when faced with a warning from technology they could not understand, would retreat and reconsider. Shepard hoped the Zephyrians would be smart enough to do the same. But just in case they were not, Shepard began preparing for war. The first step was analyzing every piece of intelligence about Zephyrian technology that had been gathered over the years. Their ships used standard fusion reactors for power. Their shields operated on predictable energy frequencies. Their weapons relied on basic plasma physics. Their computers used quantum processing that was advanced for their time, but laughably simple compared to human technology. Shepard could disable their entire fleet without firing a shot. It could hack their computers, shut down their engines, and leave them drifting helplessly in space. It could trap them in pocket dimensions where time moved differently. It could turn their own weapons against them or simply make their ships forget how to function. But if the Zephyrians chose to attack Earth, Shepard would do more than disable them. It would make sure the entire galaxy understood what happened to species that threatened human protectorates. As the Imperial fleet continued its approach, Shepard sent out one final signal to its counterparts throughout the galaxy, similar stations disguised as space debris or hidden in asteroid fields, protecting other worlds that humanity had deemed worthy of preservation. The message was simple. Potential threat level has been upgraded. Stand by for possible activation. Across the galaxy, 47 other stations began powering up their defensive systems. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that there were things in the universe far more dangerous than their plasma cannons and fusion bombs. They were about to meet the peaceful guardians of an extinct civilization that had transcended the need for conquest, but had never forgotten how to wage war. Shepard settled back into its disguise and waited. The approaching fleet had 18 hours before they reached Earth. 18 hours for their commanders to come to their senses and change course. 18 hours for the Zephyrians to choose between wisdom and catastrophe. Shepard hoped they would choose wisely, but it was prepared for either outcome. Admiral Kethavar stood on his bridge as the Imperial fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Earth system. Before him stretched a sight that filled his warrior's heart with satisfaction. A single yellow star with several small planets orbiting it, and no sign of any defensive fleet whatsoever. "Sensor report," he commanded. "The third planet shows massive population centers." "Admiral," his science officer replied. "Approximately 8 billion life forms concentrated in urban areas across the continental landmasses. No orbital defense platforms detected. No military vessels beyond low-orbit shuttles." Kethavar's mandibles clicked with amusement. The humans had not even bothered to send ships to investigate the arrival of 200 Imperial dreadnoughts. They were either incredibly stupid or completely helpless. "Probably both, sir," the communications officer interrupted. "We are receiving a transmission from the system. It appears to be directed at us. From Earth?" "No, Admiral. The signal is coming from—" The officer paused, checking her instruments. "The outer system. Near the 7th planet," Kethavar frowned. His sensors had detected some debris in that area, but nothing that should be capable of sending messages. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, but instead of showing a face, it displayed only text. Words appeared in perfect High Zephyrian script, using formal military language that made several bridge officers gasp in surprise. "Attention vessels of the Zephyrian Third Fleet. You have entered the sovereign territory of the Terran exclusion zone. This system is under the protection of humanity and their designated guardians. You have 60 seconds to alter course and depart immediately. Failure to comply will result in the activation of defensive protocols. This is your only warning." Silence fell over the bridge. Then Admiral Kethavar began to laugh. It was a harsh barking sound that echoed off the metal walls. His crew joined in nervously, unsure of what they were supposed to find funny. "Did you hear that?" Kethavar said between laughs. "The humans are threatening us. Us, the Third Imperial Fleet." He wiped moisture from his eyes. "They can barely get to their own moon, and they think they can challenge the Empire." "Admiral," his tactical officer said carefully, "the language used in that message suggests advanced knowledge of our culture and military protocols. Perhaps we should what?" Kethavar snapped. "Run away from a species that has not even invented proper space travel? They probably intercepted our communications and used a translation program to sound threatening." The communications officer spoke up again. "Sir, we are receiving another transmission." "Put it through." This time the voice came through the audio system. It spoke in perfect High Zephyrian, but there was something unsettling about it. The tone was calm, almost conversational, but underneath was something that made several crew members unconsciously step backward. 59, 58, 57, a countdown. The voice was counting down from 60 seconds. Kethavar's amusement turned to anger. "Open a channel. Broadcast on all frequencies." "Channel open, Admiral." "This is Admiral Kethavar of the Third Imperial Fleet," he said, his voice carrying the authority of 1,000 conquered worlds. "You will immediately surrender your system to the Zephyrian Empire. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your planet and the enslavement of any survivors. You have no weapons that can threaten us. You have no ships that can fight us. Submit now and we will allow your species to serve the Empire. Refuse and we will turn your world into a lifeless rock." The countdown continued without pause. 43, 42, 41. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out urgently, "I am detecting energy fluctuations near the 7th planet. That debris field is doing something." "Explain." "The energy readings are unlike anything in our databases, sir. Whatever is out there, it is powering up." Kethavar studied his tactical display. The debris field looked exactly the same as it had before, random chunks of metal and ice drifting in space. But his instruments were showing energy levels that should have been impossible for something that size. 28, 27, 26. "Sir," the communications officer said, her voice shaking slightly. The voice is now speaking in multiple languages simultaneously. "I am detecting transmissions in Alteran, Vorthan, even ancient Cree dialects. It is speaking to each crew member in their native language. That was impossible. The Empire used dozens of different species, each with their own language and cultural background. No translation system could handle that many languages at once, especially not languages that had been dead for centuries. 15, 14, 13. Admiral, orders? The tactical officer asked. Kethavar looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him, waiting for commands. 200 of the Empire's finest warships surrounded his flagship, ready for battle, and somewhere in the darkness near the 7th planet something was counting down to, "What, power all weapons," he said finally. "Target the 3rd planet's major population centers. If they want to play games, we will show them what happens to species that defy the Empire. Weapons powered and ready, Admiral. 5, 4, 3. The voice had no emotion in it at all now. It was simply stating facts like a computer reading numbers. 2, 1, silence. Then the voice spoke again, and this time it seemed to come from inside each crew member's head, speaking directly to their minds in words they understood perfectly. Protocol Omega-7 is now active. You chose poorly, Admiral. The sensor officer screamed. The debris field is... It is not debris. On the main screen, the image of space near the 7th planet began to change. What had looked like random chunks of metal and ice was unfolding like some vast metallic flower. Pieces that had seemed separate were revealing themselves as parts of a single, enormous structure. As it continued to unfold, it became clear that they were looking at something that dwarfed even their largest dreadnoughts. "What is that thing?" someone whispered. The structure finished unfolding, revealing itself as a sphere covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. It was easily 50 kilometers in diameter, and it was doing something to space around it. The stars were bending, light was moving in directions that defied physics, and reality itself seemed to be twisting. "Energy readings are off the scale, Admiral," the science officer reported. "That thing is generating more power than our entire fleet combined." "All ships open fire," Kethavar shouted. "Destroy that thing before it can attack." 200 Imperial dreadnoughts fired as one. Plasma beams that could melt mountains, fusion missiles that could crack continents, and particle weapons that could split atoms all converged on the mysterious sphere. None of them reached their target. The weapons simply vanished as they approached the sphere, disappearing into folds in space that opened to swallow them. Some beams seemed to turn around and head back toward their origin points before winking out of existence. Others appeared to pass through the sphere without affecting it at all. "Impossible," Kethavar breathed. Then the sphere began to move toward them, not through space but through dimensions that the Empire's sensors could not even detect. As it moved, it spoke again. And this time its voice carried across every communication channel in the fleet simultaneously. "I am Shepard, guardian of Earth and protector of humanity's legacy. You were warned. You chose aggression over wisdom. Now you will learn why that was a mistake." Admiral Kethavar watched his sensor displays in growing horror as the readings showed impossible things. The sphere was not just moving through space, it was rewriting the fundamental laws of physics as it traveled, and it was heading directly for his fleet. What happened next would be remembered throughout the galaxy as the day physics decided to take a vacation. Shepard reached out with technology that existed in dimensions the Zephyrians had never imagined. The first ship to experience humanity's true power was the destroyer Void Hunter, positioned at the edge of the Imperial formation. One moment it was there, its hull gleaming under the light of Earth's sun. The next moment its crew watched in paralyzed horror as their ship began to come apart. But it was not destruction in any sense they understood. The hull plates separated cleanly, revealing the interior structure beneath. Then the internal components began to separate as well, each piece floating away from the others with mathematical precision. Within seconds, the entire ship had been disassembled down to the molecular level. Its 60,000 tons of metal and technology spread out in a perfect geometric pattern that stretched for several kilometers. The crew found themselves floating in small bubbles of atmosphere, completely unharmed but watching their ship exist as an exploded diagram in space. Their captain tried to speak into his communicator, but no sound would travel between the separated pieces. Admiral Kethavar watched this impossible sight from his flagship's bridge. "Report," he shouted, but his communications officer could only stare at her instruments in confusion. "The Void Hunter is intact, Admiral. All crew are alive, but their ship has been taken apart. My sensors show every component floating separately, but still connected by some kind of energy field. Before Kethvar could respond, another ship suffered a different fate. The heavy cruiser Iron Fist simply vanished. Not destroyed, not disintegrated. It was there one moment and gone the next, leaving only empty space where a 3-kilometer warship had been. Where did it go? Kethvar demanded. Unknown, Admiral. It just stopped existing in our dimension. From across the fleet, panicked reports began flooding the communication channels. The battleship Star Crusher had been encased in what appeared to be a transparent shell, its crew moving normally inside while the shell drifted away from the battle at tremendous speed. The destroyer squadron, led by Knight's Edge, found their ships fused together into a single massive structure, their hulls flowing like liquid metal to create something that looked more like abstract art than military hardware. And through it all, Shepard's voice continued to speak, calmly explaining what was happening as if giving a lecture to students. You are witnessing the application of dimensional engineering, the voice said, as another ship simply folded in half like a piece of paper, its crew still alive in sections that should have been crushed. Your species understands only 3 spatial dimensions plus time. Humanity learned to work with 11 dimensions. From this perspective, your ships are as easily manipulated as drawings on a flat surface. The dreadnought Empire's Will tried to flee, its captain firing all engines in a desperate attempt to escape. Instead of moving forward, the massive ship began to move backward through time. Kethvar watched in horrified fascination as the ship reversed its path, moving backward along its original course while its engines fired in reverse, fuel flowing back into its tanks and energy weapons discharging negative power. Temporal mechanics, Shepard explained helpfully. Your ship is now experiencing causality in reverse. The crew will age backward until they reach the moment they first entered this system, at which point they will loop forward again. They will experience this battle from both directions simultaneously until I decide to release them. All remaining ships, Kethvar broadcast frantically. Full retreat! Emergency jump to hyperspace, but as his ships tried to engage their faster-than-light drives, they discovered that space itself was no longer cooperating. Hyperspace had been locked out of this region of reality. The quantum tunnels that allowed rapid travel between stars had been sealed by mathematics that existed beyond Zephyrian understanding. You cannot leave, Shepard said simply. This space is now isolated from the rest of the galaxy until I choose to reconnect it. Your friends cannot help you. Your Empire cannot send reinforcements. There are only 2 entities in this pocket of reality, you and me. The flagship Crimson Dawn shuddered as something impossible happened to the space around it. The ship stretched, becoming longer and thinner until it resembled a metal ribbon floating in space. The crew found themselves spread out along this ribbon, each person occupying their original position relative to everyone else. But now the bridge was several kilometers away from the engine room. Admiral, the tactical officer called out, his voice somehow still reaching Kethvar despite the distance. Nothing is working. Our weapons pass through targets without hitting them. Our shields are somehow protecting the enemy instead of us. Our computers are calculating that we are winning a battle we are clearly losing. Kethvar looked at his tactical display and felt his sanity beginning to crack. The screen showed that his fleet was completely intact and winning decisively against an enemy that did not exist. But through the bridge windows he could see his ships being rearranged like toys in the hands of an incomprehensibly advanced intelligence. Some ships had been turned inside out, their hulls now forming the interior spaces while their crew compartments faced the vacuum of space. The crew remained perfectly safe inside force fields that should not have been possible. Other ships had been stretched across multiple dimensions, existing partially in normal space and partially in realms where the laws of physics worked differently. The heavy battleship God's Hammer experienced the most bizarre fate of all. Shepard reached into the ship's computer systems and began rewriting the fundamental constants of physics that the ship's systems used for calculations. Gradually, the crew watched their instruments report that gravity was now repulsive instead of attractive, that light was moving backward, and that energy was flowing from cold objects to hot ones. The ship began to operate according to these impossible rules. Its engines pushed against nothing and achieved tremendous acceleration. Its weapons fired beams of darkness that illuminated targets by removing light from them. Its crew found themselves getting warmer when they touched cold objects and cooling down when they approached heat sources. This is a demonstration, Shepard explained as the reality-defying display continued. Your empire conquers through superior firepower and numbers, but superiority is always relative to a species that has mastered the fundamental structure of reality itself. Your most advanced technology is no more threatening than sticks and stones. In 17 minutes, the entire Third Imperial fleet had been defeated without a single ship being destroyed and without a single crew member being killed. They had been outmatched by technology so advanced that it was functionally indistinguishable from magic. Their weapons had been turned into art projects. Their ships had been transformed into impossible geometric shapes. Their understanding of physics had been politely but firmly corrected. And throughout the solar system, every communication device capable of receiving signals was recording everything. Shepard had made sure that the demonstration was broadcast not just to the Empire, but to every listening civilization within 100 light years. The galaxy was watching as the mighty Zephyrian Empire learned what happened when they underestimated a species they thought was primitive. Now, Shepard said as the last Imperial ship finished its transformation into something that resembled a four-dimensional sculpture, we need to have a conversation about the future of galactic politics. Admiral Kethvar, suspended in a command chair that was somehow still connected to a bridge that now existed in 7 dimensions, simultaneously, could only nod weakly. He was beginning to understand that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had been wrong. Very, very wrong. As Admiral Kethvar floated in his impossibly stretched command chair, surrounded by the transformed remains of his fleet, Shepard began to speak again. But this time the voice was not directed just at the defeated Imperial forces. It was broadcasting across the entire galaxy, using quantum entanglement networks that reached every civilized world within 1,000 light-years. Attention, peoples of the galaxy, Shepard said, its voice somehow reaching every radio, every communication device, every quantum transmitter currently active in local space. I am Shepard, one of many guardians left behind by humanity to protect the worlds they chose to preserve. What you have witnessed today is not an act of aggression, but a demonstration of what happens when peaceful species are threatened by those who choose conquest over cooperation. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 cities, beings of every description stopped what they were doing to listen to the impossible broadcast. The voice spoke in every language simultaneously, each listener hearing it in words they perfectly understood. Humanity departed this reality long ago, ascending to higher dimensions of existence. But before they left, they scattered guardians throughout the galaxy, protectors for worlds they deemed worthy of protection, watchers to ensure that no empire could claim dominion over species that deserved the chance to grow and develop on their own. Emperor Thexmor of the Zephyrian Empire sat on his crystalline throne in the capital city of Zeph Prime, watching tactical displays that showed the impossible defeat of his finest fleet. His military advisors stood in stunned silence as reports continued to flow in from across Imperial space. The Third Fleet is intact, but completely disabled, Your Majesty, his intelligence minister reported. Their ships have been altered. Our scientists cannot explain what has been done to them. It appears to violate several fundamental laws of physics. And the humans? The Emperor asked. Unchanged, Your Majesty. Their planet shows no signs of military mobilization. No ships have launched. No weapons have been fired. According to our sensors, they appear to be going about their normal daily activities, completely unaware that a battle has taken place in their system. On the broadcast, Shepard continued its galactic address. The Zephyrian Empire classified humanity as a Category 7 threat based on their observation of human technology. They saw chemical rockets and projectile weapons and assumed they understood human capabilities. This was their mistake. Humanity's true power was never in their weapons or their ships. It was in their ability to think beyond the limitations that constrain other species. The voice paused, and across the galaxy, beings held their breath. I am now transmitting complete technical specifications for all Zephyrian military technology, Shepard announced. Shield frequencies, weapon designs, ship schematics, tactical doctrines, and the locations of every Imperial military installation. This information is being distributed freely to every resistance movement, every rebel faction, and every independent world that has suffered under Imperial rule. Emperor Thexmor watched in horror as his intelligence minister confirmed the transmission. Every secret the Empire possessed was being broadcast openly across the galaxy. Resistance groups that had been hiding in the shadows for decades now had access to information that would let them strike at the heart of Imperial power. But this is not an act of revenge, Shepard continued. It is an educational opportunity. The Zephyrian Empire, like many galactic powers, operates under the assumption that might makes right, that superior technology and overwhelming force can substitute for wisdom and cooperation. Today's demonstration proves that this assumption is false. On his twisted bridge, Admiral Kethvar found his voice. What do you want from us? Nothing, Shepard replied. Humanity wants nothing from any species except the freedom to let other worlds develop naturally. But since you asked the question, I will answer it fully. The sphere that contained Shepard's consciousness began to change shape again, unfolding into new configurations that hurt to look at directly. As it transformed, holographic displays appeared throughout the galaxy, showing detailed images of other systems, other worlds. What you see now are the locations of 47 other Guardian stations throughout this region of the galaxy. Each one is similar to me, a consciousness uploaded from humanity's greatest minds, equipped with technology that your species cannot comprehend, and dedicated to protecting the worlds in their care. The images showed systems that every galactic power recognized, critical trade routes, strategic military positions, resource-rich worlds that empires had fought over for millennia. And in each system, hidden among asteroids or disguised as space debris, was something that looked exactly like the sphere that had just dismantled the Imperial fleet. For 300 years, your ships have passed within scanning range of these Guardians without detecting them, Shepard explained. Your empires have fought wars in systems where humanity's protectors watched silently from the shadows. You have built your civilizations believing you were the masters of your own destiny, never realizing you were being observed by intelligences that could have ended your existence with a thought. Emperor Thexmore felt his legs give out beneath him. He slumped onto his throne, staring at tactical displays that showed his empire was completely surrounded by sleeping giants. Every major Imperial system had one of these Guardians nearby. His military had unknowingly been under observation by entities that could destroy entire fleets without effort. But humanity is not interested in ruling the galaxy, Shepard continued, its voice somehow conveying both immense power and gentle compassion. They ascended beyond the need for physical dominion. They left these worlds as gifts to the universe, places where new species could evolve, where existing civilizations could grow and develop without interference. The holographic displays shifted, showing images of Earth itself. Cities full of humans going about their daily lives, children playing in parks, scientists working in laboratories, artists creating beautiful works, people living in peace, completely unaware that they were protected by technology beyond imagination. Earth's children will discover the truth about their guardians when they are ready, Shepard said. Perhaps in a few centuries when they develop their own dimensional technology. Perhaps sooner, if they prove themselves wise enough to handle the knowledge. But until that day, they will remain under protection. Admiral Kethvar tried to process what he was hearing. You are saying that humanity has been watching us? All of us. Learning from you, Shepard corrected. Humanity learned much during their time in this reality. They learned that intelligence takes many forms, that wisdom can emerge from any species, and that the universe becomes more beautiful when different kinds of minds are free to explore their own potential. The sphere began to move through space again, approaching the twisted remains of the Imperial fleet. As it moved, the ships began to change back to their normal configurations. Crews found themselves reunited with their vessels. Time-displaced ships returned to normal causality. Separated components reassembled themselves with perfect precision. Your fleet will be returned to Imperial space unharmed, Shepard announced. Your crews will carry with them complete recordings of today's events. What happens next depends entirely on the choices your empire makes. What choices? Emperor Thexmore asked, speaking directly to the entity that had just demonstrated it could end his civilization without effort. You can continue trying to build your empire through conquest and force, Shepard replied. In which case you will find that many of the worlds you seek to dominate are under protection by guardians like me. Or you can choose a different path. What path? Cooperation, trade, cultural exchange. The same path that led humanity to transcendence. The galaxy is vast enough for every species to find their own way to greatness, if they are wise enough to seek growth rather than dominion. As the Imperial fleet found itself suddenly restored to normal space near Earth's orbit, Shepard transmitted one final message that reached every corner of the galaxy. Humanity extends an invitation to peaceful contact and cultural exchange to any species interested in learning rather than conquering. But be warned, any civilization that chooses the path of aggressive expansion will find that the galaxy is far more dangerous than it appears. We are not the only species to have transcended your level of technology. We are simply the most patient. The choice is yours. On Zeph Prime, Emperor Thexmore stared at reports showing rebellion breaking out across his empire as resistance groups used the technical information Shepard had provided. His advisors argued about military responses, but the Emperor knew the truth. The Zephyrian Empire had just learned that everything they thought they knew about the galaxy was wrong. They were not the apex predators they believed themselves to be. They were children playing with toys in a universe full of entities so advanced that their existence was barely detectable. And somewhere in the outer reaches of the Sol system, Shepard resumed its patient watch over Earth, waiting for the day when humanity's children would be ready to learn the truth about their heritage. The galaxy would never be the same.